Good afternoon and welcome to this edition of the People Progressing podcast. Today, we're really going to dive deep into some really interesting things about trauma. And
Mm.
today I have Sofia Webb on, who's a complete expert on this subject. And I'm just so excited to have you on, Sophia. And first thing I always do is I just have my guests just kind of describe where you grew up, what you like to do as a kid, and kind of
Mhm.
go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Sophia. Nice to meet everyone. I go by she, her, hers. So I grew up in upstate New York. I was born in Seattle, so I've kind of moved around the country a little bit. And my family and I traveled around Argentina growing up. I also had a bilingual family living with me growing up, and so I had the opportunity to experience a lot of different cultures and um, be able to learn another language. And so I've had a pretty diverse childhood, and I'm very grateful to my parents for showing me the outdoors, showing me, different parts of the world. And yeah, so that's a little bit about me and my childhood and what that looked like.
Yeah, did you like doing I know you skied a lot. Did you do any other
Yeah,
sports or
yeah. So
band or
we,
music or
yeah, absolutely. So we skied a lot. As kids, we went up into the Adirondacks to ski with our family. I also played the cello growing up, so I played that through high school. At one point, I was the only celloist in the orchestra, so that was pretty cool. And also volleyball. Volleyball was big for me. I played varsity in high school and travel, and then I also played in college for a little bit. So, yeah, I would say it was great to have all those things because it helped me have mindfulness growing up, and having access to those activities and the outdoors was really great for me to kind of help self-regulate.
yeah, I just recently took up
Mhm.
skiing about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And it is that. I mean, when you get off that ski lift and you look out over
Mhm.
just like kind of my background there, when you look out across the valley and you see the
Yeah.
mountains and it's pretty amazing experience, to be honest with you. I just fell
Yeah.
in love with it.
Hmm.
It's pretty empowering. And
Yeah.
you went to school at LSU, is that right?
Yes. Yep. So I completed my Master of Social Work through LSU. I was living in Hawaii at the time, so I did their distance program.
Wow.
And I did my practicum on the island of Hawaii. So that was super cool to experience different cultures and populations and supporting their mental health struggles, increasing accessibility, and things like that.
So I have to ask
Mhm.
this. You
Yeah.
you you grew up in Western New York, but you traveled to Argentina. You had a
Mhm.
bilingual family living with you. You moved to Hawaii.
Mhm.
You've done some different things in your life. What makes you get out there and just experience life like that? Not to be afraid to take a leap to go live on Hawaii and do some
Mhm.
things like that. It's pretty cool.
Well, I think that was instilled in me from a young age, just from example from my parents. And so, they really normalized that, getting out and taking on new experiences and challenges. And I also think there's a part of it that, um, it's almost this process too. I sometimes joke that I'm a little bit addicted to the experience of learning new things and growing. And I think without those new experiences and challenges, you're not going to grow much. And so I've always been very curious and open to new things because I feel like it's part of navigating and figuring out my internal world more and feeling more connected to myself. So there's a part of me that too that's intrinsic that I've always kind of been that way.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's there's no the clock never runs out on growth.
Yeah.
And the more you can grow and learn every single day, doesn't matter how old you are,
Yep.
and you've never been afraid to go out and do that, and which brought you to Colorado because you love outdoor activities and so
Yeah.
forth. So what do you like about living in Colorado that's so intriguing to you?
So, living in Hawaii, I mean, obviously it's absolutely beautiful there. So much access to, being outside and doing things outside and hiking. And I wanted a place where I felt like was equally beautiful, but also had the same culture and spirit of like being outside and being active. Because I didn't find that to be very common living in upstate New York. I felt like it wasn't as common to be outside, to do things in nature. And so being surrounded by a community that prioritizes that is really great for me and helpful for me so that I keep myself accountable too. So Colorado's been amazing. We ski here, in the winter. And then a lot of people here have a summer sport too. So our summer sport is for my fiance and I is dirt biking. And we also like to camp in the summer. And so having access to those sports has really helped me. It's what helps me to be mindful and to be present. Because if not, you're going to get hurt, right? If you're not paying attention while you're skiing or dirt biking. So it really helps you center and ground so that you can make sure you're keeping yourself safe while you're doing that sport. So that's been great to just kind of embed that into my life and being very present. I think being outside and doing those sports has helped me to be more present.
Oh, I love that. I think
Yeah.
I really think being present is a skill
Hmm.
that I work with a lot of business leaders, and I think it's a skill that is hard to master,
Yeah.
because especially for leadership, because people in leadership are always wanting to fix, they're always wanting to coach,
Hmm.
they're always wanting to help you.
Hmm.
And when you're trying to be present with somebody, but you're thinking about how you can fix them, help them, coach them at the same time,
Hmm.
you're not really listening, you're not being present. So
Yep.
you're working on yourself constantly, even when you're having fun.
Yep.
That's pretty
Yeah.
amazing. I
Yeah,
just love that.
absolutely.
Okay, so let's get into your work because I've been dying to get
Okay.
into this. Now you
Yeah.
are a trauma expert,
Hmm.
and I want to go into how you got into that
Hmm.
specifically. But you
Hmm.
you said you had a master's in social work and you
Hmm.
teach in the college level social works
Yep.
classes and so forth.
Hmm.
What got you first involved in social work and then into the trauma piece?
Yeah, so I think since I was a little girl, I've always felt like I had this high level of emotional intelligence, and I had had people share that with me as well. And I kind of what I navigate and what I do with my clients too when I'm trying to help them figure out what their life purpose is part of it is, what does the world need, but also what is something I'm good at, what is something I'm passionate about, right? And what's something that also can um, fund my life. And so I kind of thought about what would that be, and a lot of times I had friends asking me for advice, or people felt safe and they could trust me and would share things with me. Maybe they weren't sharing with others. So then I came to terms with maybe mental health is a field that I would like to work in. And so in college and my undergraduate studies, I majored in sociology. And I really loved sociology because it ties in a lot of the ideas of psychology, but we're also looking at systems. We're looking at society and all these external factors that play into the individual's life or the group's life or the family's life rather than taking mostly an individual perspective. So that's where I started to learn about social work. And I spent some time preparing and planning for what program I wanted to seek. I was between seeking a master's in mental health counseling or a master's in social work. And a lot of the advice that people gave to me is you can do anything with a master's in social work degree. Whereas with a master's in mental health counseling, you're going to be much more narrowed down into a specific profession. And so social work was, the opportunity to learn about psychology and counseling, but also social justice and anti-oppressive practice and multiculturalism and, oppressive systems. So I was always very passionate about those things as well. So I decided to get my master in social work, found a great program through LSU while I was living in Hawaii, finished my MSW while living there, and then moved back to the States and back to Colorado. And that's where I started doing school social work. And what I learned as a school social worker was that trauma is huge and is playing into everyone's life, their behaviors. I was seeing it impact the way that students could learn. They were in survival brain instead of learning brain, right? So the way that we receive information from our environment, it goes through this process, right? Comes through our brainstem, it goes through our limbic system to our cortex. With trauma, that impacts our ability to relay messages to our cortex because a lot of times we're in an escalated state. So our cortex is not as online as it would be for someone who's developed in a much more healthy way. So I learned, these students are really struggling and they don't have the supports that they need, and they're being judged from the surface level of their behavior, their grades, whatever it is, instead of a trauma-informed approach, which says, instead of, what's wrong with you, it's what happened to you. It's a different perspective and approach. So from there, I decided I wanted to go into private practice. And that's when I realized I really loved trauma and helping people work through their trauma and the mood dysregulation it causes, the issues in relationships that come up through trauma, attachment issues, anxiety. So I went and did extra training in trauma and got certified. And then eventually I opened my own practice specializing in trauma. And so I work a lot with clients who have complex trauma, which is um, similar but different from the typical trauma we hear of, or PTSD, where it's more of this major single event that happened. Complex trauma is multiple repetitive traumatic events, and usually it starts in childhood and it continues on, and we have similar symptoms and that similar effect that we would have with a single event of trauma through complex trauma. So most of my clients have complex trauma, and I'm supporting them in navigating that, building stability in their body, working through the thoughts and memories, and integrating their trauma. So that kind of is just like a little timeline there. And then I got into teaching as well because I want to, again, emphasize the importance of being trauma informed. And so I teach trauma informed care at the master's level, and I teach a few other social work classes. And I really love that because it's another way to um, make our system more trauma informed, is as a teacher, basically. So I do a little bit of direct work, a little teaching, and I'm really happy with where I am right now. And I feel like I'm in a place where I have the ability and the tools to make a difference in the community, and try to bring awareness to trauma and the importance of being trauma informed. So,
Pretty amazing story. And I think you mentioned the word purpose,
yeah.
and we'll get into more of that later. That's huge in my world. Your purpose is definitely to serve. Your purpose is definitely to serve others and help others, and
Hmm.
that shows through so greatly. Let's dive in. Trauma.
Yes.
For those out there who don't know,
Mhm.
they've heard the word trauma.
Mhm.
Can you give some examples of what trauma might have been for a child? Just,
Yeah.
I know you can't go through, there's so many different things that can cause
Hmm.
trauma, but just some basic
Hmm.
things that might cause trauma in a child that might affect, like you said, their brain not working the way it should.
Yeah, I mean, it can be a range of things, but a lot of times what we see with those who have childhood trauma is either some level of abuse, whether physical, emotional, sexual abuse. We see neglect. We see just, maybe unhealthy relationships with parents, like where the attunement and attachment process wasn't healthy. So the child did not learn to trust their world. They didn't learn how to co-regulate, which then leads us to self-regulate. It can be being bullied in school. It can be, sometimes we see that neurodivergence is intertwined with trauma. So say you have an ADHD diagnosis, and, trauma can affect the way our brain develops, which can lead to symptoms that present like ADHD. Or if you have ADHD and then you're bullied as a result, right, you experience trauma from that. Um, so lots of different things that can come up that lead to a child experiencing trauma. And trauma is essentially, we have these long-lasting effects, right? We've developed these maladaptive responses to harmless stimuli, or maybe the stimuli is harmful, but now it's was harmful, but now you're attaching it to things that aren't harmful now as an adult because of that experience you had as a child. So that's when it's affecting your daily functioning. And that's when we would, diagnose PTSD. Maybe it'd be PTSD chronic, because it's been going on long term. So that's kind of what I would say is a gist of what childhood trauma would look like. And sometimes it can be losing a parent young. It can also be your parents divorcing, it can be having a parent that has mental health issues, addiction struggles, incarceration. So we have something called average childhood experiences, or ACEs, and there's a list of them, of different, average childhood experiences, which are some of the ones that I've listed. It could be abuse, divorce, things like that. And the higher child score is, the more likely they are, the more at risk they are for poor health outcomes as adults, risky behavior, violence, things like that, addiction. So there's a direct correlation between those forms of trauma.
Yeah, and I know somebody that had their trauma was uh the 9 month pregnancy.
Yep. Oh yeah,
Um the
traumatic. Yep.
the
Yep.
mo-
Traumatic
the
gestation.
yeah, and
Yep.
and so the anxiety and the stress that the birth mother was going through for 9 months just went
Yep.
through them for 9 months in the womb, and they
Absolutely.
came out with trauma.
Mhm. Yep.
And the problem I see as being an ex-teacher,
Mm.
a former teacher, is so many people in the education world and in the world in general do
Hmm.
not understand what trauma is and what it can cause in the child.
Hmm.
So you might have somebody in class. I'm just thinking back, and they act out, or they
Hmm.
something can trigger them like that, and you just have no idea that they had trauma in their life. It's not told you. It's you don't understand trauma. What are we doing to get more educational awareness out there, not just for people in education, but for the world in general, so people
Mm.
can understand what this trauma is? Because I think a lot of people think when they hear PTSD, they're thinking somebody that just came back from
Combat.
war
Hmm.
and those things. But PTSD is real in so many people who were never in war,
Yep.
who had these things. What are
Absolutely.
some things that we can do to get people more aware of this trauma?
So I think obviously education and getting the information out is huge, because we don't see that, right? How many places have you been in, where you've been trained or
Zero.
given it? Yeah, unless you seek it out yourself, it's really not available. So I think the first step is just to make it accessible. And there's this great documentary on Netflix that I think people should watch, because their goal is to build awareness. It's called Light in the Darkness. And it's a great documentary that brings, educates on what trauma is, the stigma around it, the symptoms that come up, the way that it's intertwined with like our gut health, what happens to the brain when it's traumatized. Um, it talks about medications, it talks about interventions, like there's equine therapy, working with horses, music, all these different alternative holistic approaches to healing from trauma, building awareness, realizing, why do I feel this way about this situation? Why do I respond this way? It feels like I don't have much control over it. Like, where is that coming from? Just trying to start asking yourself those questions, and then obviously talking to someone about it, somebody who is trauma informed, a mental health professional that uses a bottom up approach, which is essentially, we're navigating the body in the way that it's responding to these triggers or stimulus in the environment, and how to manage that, how to feel like we have more control over it. So I think what we need to do is get information out, and there are a lot of great ways and places that are trying to do that, but it's still not as accessible as it should be, you
Yeah,
know.
it is. I know it's not in the educational world, the world I
Yeah.
came from,
Yeah.
but when you get out in the real world too, when these people are out trying to work and they're trying to make a
Hmm.
living for themselves, and they've never dealt with their trauma before. They had trauma as a kid.
Hmm.
It caused a lot of frustration and angst during their school years. Now they're into the real world, and they still haven't dealt with it. They still haven't
Hmm.
gone to someone like you to talk, get through, and
Yep.
get some therapy for it. Even the working world has no idea about it, and
Hmm.
it's kind of frustrating for me, knowing
Hmm.
somebody with trauma and
Yep.
now understanding it a lot. I
Hmm.
can tell you this: once you understand it, like you've done a beautiful job explaining what trauma is and what it can do,
Hmm.
it gives you a sense of empathy that's really strong.
Oh yeah. Hmm.
And then I
Yeah.
want I want to go into this because you say this on here. Um, Unconditional self-love with someone with trauma. How hard is that?
I think it's it's it doesn't have to be hard, but it's hard work to get to that the level of committing to yourself. I think what people need to realize that developing self-love is like learning how to ride a bike, right? Our society does not normalize self-love. We're taught love thy neighbor, right? Do unto others
Yeah.
as you want done unto you. It's a lot of outward focus, showing up for others, right? So we're conditioned into this idea that we should be focused on everyone else, and when we focus on ourselves, we're being self-centered and selfish. We literally don't have the skills or tools to be look internal, to tune into ourselves. We've been taught how to tune out. So learning how to love yourself is like learning how to ride a bike. The first time you ride a bike, right? It feels weird and awkward. I'm gonna fall, scrape my knee, and I don't like this. But if you stick with it and you don't give up on yourself, you're going to build muscle memory. You're going to build the skill and the confidence to ride the bike. And self-love is like that. It doesn't just poof happen one day. Either you had, parents or a community that modeled how to love yourself and you practice that throughout your childhood, or that wasn't modeled for you and now you have to learn how to do it as an adult. But it's our brain, we have neuroplasticity. We have the ability to learn new things and build new neural pathways. It's also part of what allows us to be traumatized, right? But the beauty of neuroplasticity is that we can also learn new ways of understanding and doing. And so that's how I look at self-love. It's a practice. It's something we develop over time by practicing compassion towards ourselves, by prioritizing our needs, setting boundaries, communicating, like navigating who we are. Because when we don't do that, we don't have an identity. We don't know who we are. We're neglecting ourselves. You're not going to like yourself, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, you're not going to feel connected to yourself, just like any relationship or friendship you have, right? The things that you have to do to help that person feel loved, right? When they come to you when they're struggling or they're not feeling confident about something, and you encourage them, and you give them attention, and you give them warmth and kindness. That person, right, is going to feel safe with you. They're going to feel
Yeah.
connected to you. That's compassion, right? Self-compassion looks like giving that same thing to yourself when you're struggling. And through that, over time, you develop self-love. And so I think people don't like connect with that or recognize the contrast between how they treat others and how they treat themselves. And if they treated any one of their friends the way they treat themselves, I don't think that friend would like them very much. They would
Yeah.
not feel very connected or loved, right?
Right. And
So,
that's with people with trauma or not trauma, right?
yeah,
I mean, that's for all of us. That's for the human race.
absolutely.
That's for
Yeah.
the, I mean, I think it's you said it. So many people don't have it. And like I know it's kind of hard to allow yourself to do it sometimes.
Yeah.
I think going back to the trauma piece though,
Hmm.
one of the things, and actually trauma or not trauma, one of the pieces to help us with self-love is to be
Hmm.
really authentic and be very vulnerable
Yep.
and
Oh,
be
yes.
okay with that.
Hmm. Yep.
So
Yep.
when you're working with somebody with trauma
Mm.
and you're trying to get them through the trauma piece, do you go back and revisit the trauma to try to
So,
get them to accept that trauma and that it happened, that it's okay? I'm just kind of fascinated by how you
yeah.
deal with that.
Yeah, so if I were to do that with a client right away, that would be very overwhelming. A lot of times, these are coping mechanisms, defense mechanisms that we develop to feel safe, right? Like as children, we had no choice but to adapt. And so our nervous system adapts around a chaotic environment. And so if you try to take that away from someone, they're going to feel very overwhelmed, they're not going to be stabilized because they've developed their stability or safety surrounding that maladaptive response, right? So first, what we work on is building safety and stability in that person. So
Okay.
sometimes that's just building that in the body, building awareness of emotions. What am I feeling? What does this feel like in my body? How can I soothe and respond to this emotion in a healthy way? That's how we first build safety and stability. Because if we start working through those traumatic memories and thoughts and experiences before they have the tools to maintain stability and safety, it's going to be very overwhelming. So we do a different process, much more of a bottom up approach, where top down is like working through the cognition first, right? So trauma informed therapists do take a different approach because we have that understanding of the importance of safety for the individual, also in the therapeutic space. They need to feel safe in
Right.
relation to me, because
Right.
relationships might not feel safe to them,
Right.
whatever level it is, whether it's with a teacher, a parent, any other adult or profession or authority or power dynamic. Like, we have to be mindful that this also is something that needs to feel safe. So that's kind of the approach that we take when working with individuals that have trauma. And so, part of it is there, we do acceptance and commitment therapy. It is coming to radical acceptance. It is, at some point being able to navigate and give blame to the person who has the blame, because there is a lot of distortion in the trauma narrative of like whose fault it is, right?
Right. Right.
And with children, I think they tend to turn inward and blame themselves because they don't have, their prefrontal, their cortex fully developed, right? They don't have the logical, critical thinking part of their brain. A lot of it is the limbic system. So all they can use to understand their experiences is their emotions, right? So when a parent is lashing out, it's not, oh, this parent, my mom's having a hard day. It's something's wrong with me. I'm bad, because that's the only way they can understand that experience. They don't have the skills or tools to be able to like navigate that relationship that way. So yeah, I think, relational trauma is huge, interpersonal trauma is huge. We see that a lot with complex trauma and childhood trauma. It can just be not having safety, and your, having an unhealthy attachment with parents can lead you to feel very anxious as an adult in relationships, at work, right, with an employer or boss,
Right. Right. Right.
um, and not having, assertive communication skills, not knowing how to set boundaries, all these skills we need to be healthy adults, we're kind of lacking, right? So yeah, I kind of got went off
No.
on that topic, but yeah, I think um that's, we have to be very intentional
Well,
in this
what?
work. Yeah.
Yeah, and wait, you did a
Mhm.
beautiful job explaining that. One of the it was explained to me one time was uh, that they live in shame.
Mhm.
The
Yep.
person I know who's gone through this and stuff, that was told us that they just live in shame. So
Mhm.
anytime something goes wrong or anything like that, the shame just boils
Mhm.
and boils and
Yep.
boils. And
Mhm.
um, this is fascinating to me. How much empathy do you have, Sophia, when you're working with these people? Does empathy just come pouring out of you? I mean, is it hard for you to hear some of the things that some of these, you mentioned a
Mhm.
word, and the word really struck me, was the person that I know that we deal with trauma. I feel like
Mhm.
they're living in chaos all the time.
Mhm.
They can never settle down. They can never trust. And getting them to trust, like when something good happens, they don't want to hear it. They don't trust it,
Mhm.
and,
Mhm.
and so forth.
Mhm.
And I look at it as living in chaos all the time.
Mhm.
And you mentioned that word. How do you try to take that away? And how much empathy
Mhm.
does it take to do that?
Yeah, well, I think everyone is different, but I will say I do feel like my empathy is endless. And I
Yeah.
think part of that is because I have my own complex trauma that I've had to heal from. I've felt, I know what it feels like to be misunderstood, to feel like the way I'm responding is not authentic to who I am. It feels like something's happening here that I don't understand, and I don't know how to change it. So I've experienced that myself. I've had to do the work myself. So I know how difficult that is. I know how hard it is to be vulnerable and to build trust with someone. But I also know what it feels like on the other side of that, and to
Yeah.
have that trust and to have a
Yeah.
space where you can work through things, and with, unconditional positive regard, unconditional empathy and compassion. I know what that feels like too, and the other side of it. And so that's why I try to give that to others, because I have experienced that myself. And in, social work or the mental health field, we call that a dual perspective. And so essentially it's, I have an understanding of what it feels like to struggle with that specific issue myself. So it gives me a different level of understanding and empathy. So I do think that's kind of worked well for me. But had I not worked through my own trauma and come to a place of stability myself, I wouldn't be able to create that safety in providing trauma therapy. So I had to do that work first. And I still, meet with my own, therapist every 2 weeks because I feel like it keeps me accountable and it reminds me what it feels like to be on the other side, to be the client. So I think, that has helped a lot. I have endless empathy because I've learned how to be effective with my compassion. I've learned how to hold space for myself and not overdo it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I've learned how to manage compassion fatigue and all the things. So I feel like I can be very effective with my clients because of the safety and stability I have in myself. But yeah, no, it's and the vulnerability is huge. With trauma, we don't feel safe with vulnerability, right?
All right.
So we've built up these walls or these ways of coping that prevent us from accessing, the gift of vulnerability. I mean, it's we need that for connection, right? So we're not able to make deep, meaningful connections because we don't trust, we're not being vulnerable. And so I think in the therapeutic space, you can build safety in that. You can build safety in being vulnerable and having boundaries, right? Because that's what we're doing in that space. And we're modeling what a healthy relationship should look like, right? So it's building safety in that because you're right. We build safety in the chaos. And so when things feel good or right or normal, it's going to be a threat to your system. Like, oh, we can't trust this, right?
Yeah.
We're waiting
Yeah.
for the next shoe to drop.
Yeah. Yeah.
So shame is huge. And I'll tell you the antidote to shame is self-compassion. And so it's learning how to practice self-compassion, how to develop this skill over time so that instead of responding to with shame, you respond with compassion. It's just a different way of coping. We're human beings. We all have moments where we judge ourselves, right? But should we meet that thought with shame? We should meet every thought with compassion, right? Okay, I'm judging myself. I'm a human being. It's gonna happen. It's not this expectation of like total positivity because that's not human, right?
Right.
We
Right.
have a
Right.
wide range of emotion. So self-compassion means I just try to meet each moment and thought with compassion. I welcome it, even if it's negative, meet it with compassion so that I can be a whole person.
Yeah. A great way to explain that. I want to kind of go back and touch on something you said earlier too. You use the
Mm-hmm.
word regulation. Um, and the way I've seen it is when a child or even an adult who's been through
Mm-hmm.
trauma, something can trigger them. So
Mm-hmm.
certain things can trigger them, and all of a sudden they get deregulated. And when they get
Mm-hmm.
deregulated, the front part of their brain doesn't work very well,
Yeah.
especially for kids.
Mm-hmm.
What is your go to, or what do you tell people who are dealing with that? So let's
Mm-hmm.
say I'm a teacher, and
Mm-hmm.
let's say I have a kid that gets deregulated.
Mm-hmm.
I have figured out that he has trauma, and this is what happens when he gets triggered.
Mm-hmm.
What do you tell them? What would you coach them on when they have somebody get deregulated?
Yeah. So I actually have a great TED Talk for this that I tell people to watch. It's called Anger is Your Ally because they explain our triune brain or the way the brain functions when we're escalated, right? Fight, flight, freeze, fawn.
Right, right,
And like you said, when we're escalated, our cortex isn't fully online, right? It's not helpful to us because in that state we have adrenaline pumping, we're escalated because we're going into survival mode. So what we first need to do, right? If you're thinking about, the hand model and you're in, this is the brainstem, this is the cortex, and this is the amygdala, the limbic system's in here. When we're like this, we need to come back down to here, right? So we're escalated, someone says something, an experience, we're triggered. This is your 5-year-old self in the driver's seat, right? Not going to say or do things that we mean. It's just gonna not, this is dangerous. So we want to reconnect. So in the video, they talk about the ways to do that. First is to breathe. The first thing we need to do is think about my heart rate is racing. I'm breathing heavy. Like my body is escalated. I need to stabilize my body. That's the first thing we do. Don't try to talk through it. Don't try to resolve it. You don't have all the tools you need to do
Right.
that. So
Right.
first, help them breathe through it, help them de-escalate, whatever that looks like for them, right? First, we want to ground. Then we want to name it. All right, what are you feeling? What's going on with you? What's coming up for you? Are you angry? Are you feeling anxious? Like, let's name what we're feeling. Then we want to maybe do something mindful, like something to bring us back to the present moment a little bit more, a way to express whatever that emotion is, right? Sometimes journaling helps, like just having a moment to organize what you're feeling. I figured out what I'm feeling, let me organize it a bit more. And then we can ask ourselves, why am I feeling this way? What's the message? So you inquire, why do I feel angry? Like, why did it happen? Now I'm in a better space. I'm de-escalated, right? My cortex is reconnected. I can now try to navigate why I'm feeling this way. Now I can have a conversation with my teacher about what came up for me in that moment. Where when I'm like this, I don't have the tools to communicate effectively or to even understand why I'm feeling the way I am because I'm triggered right now.
Right.
I don't
Right.
know why. You're asking
Right.
me a
Yeah.
question I don't have the answer for.
Right.
That's not fair. So
Yeah.
it's not fair to expect a child or an adult to give you information or an answer for what they're feeling in this state because they're not going to know quite yet. So that
And,
I love that video, that TED Talk. It really does a great job.
and mention that TED Talk again.
Anger is your ally.
Anger is your ally. And you
Yeah,
did
if
it.
you no.
Oh,
I wish.
oh,
But
okay.
I did not do it. Yeah.
Um,
Maybe one day.
yeah, you will be. This
Yeah.
is fascinating. You're doing a great job explaining this. So with an adult
Hmm.
doesn't because we never knew my age, we never knew anything about trauma. That was never something that was ever brought up. I didn't really realize it until about 5 years ago what
Mm.
trauma was.
Hmm.
How many adults are living out there right now that had trauma in their life and have just been trying to figure out life ever
Hmm.
since, that don't have any clue, that could
Hmm.
be listening to this and say, you know what, maybe that's why I can't love myself. Maybe that's why I get anxiety. Maybe that's why
Hmm.
I get, panic attacks or whatever, because I had some trauma as a kid and I never dealt
Hmm.
with it.
Hmm.
What would you say to them?
Yeah. So I think there is a statistic out there that says about four in five individuals have experienced
That's
trauma.
huge. That's a
Yeah.
lot.
So it's about, yeah, 80%.
Yeah.
And so you definitely, if you haven't had trauma, you definitely know someone who has trauma. So everyone is impacted by trauma in some way, whether personally or through someone they care about. We we all have these things that, it's the way we're constructed, right? We're constructed through those experiences that are stressful and traumatic to respond and perceive our world in a certain way. We all have that, right? At some level. And so I think more people have trauma than they realize. And being willing to explore that and build awareness and find a new way of responding is only going to empower you, right? But a lot of
Right.
people see that it's like, oh, that's weakness to admit
Right.
there's something I don't have control over, right? So there's a lot of fear surrounding that, but it's only empowerment, to be willing to accept that and build awareness and navigate and to respond differently is only going to empower you to have a better quality of life every day, every moment, because you can be more present and aware of yourself, you know.
So it
So
doesn't matter what age, you can still
yeah.
get help and treatment for it. Um,
Hmm.
and I want to ask this question too, Sophia, that
Yeah.
trauma just doesn't happen when you're a kid. Trauma can happen later in life as well. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. So somebody gets in a car accident in their 30s
Hmm.
and it was a very traumatic experience and they
Hmm.
never
Yep.
looked at it as trauma, PTSD,
Hmm.
and that could trigger something that happened even before that. I had a gentleman on my podcast.
Hmm.
His trauma was when he was 12
Hmm.
and he was coming home from school and someone tried to abduct him.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't really, again, he's in his late 40s, early 50s.
Mm-hmm.
No one knew anything about what to
Mm-hmm.
do about that.
Mm-hmm.
Then when he was in his late 40s, he was driving up to a gas station and out comes running the clerk, and two kids are running out, 18-year-old kids are running after him, stabbing him. He jumps out, saves them, and everything else. Bingo, it triggered the trauma from when he was 12.
Mm-hmm.
And then he went and got treatment for it.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess getting this out there, somebody's listening to this and saying, man, I think I probably did have some trauma in my life, because you
Yeah.
said about 80% of us have. What would you suggest for them to do?
Well, I think first it's, you know, it's building the courage to meet with someone to help identify what that is. Because I do think you might be at a certain place where maybe you're hyper vigilant about certain things, right? If you've been in a car accident, maybe you're hyper vigilant about getting in a car and letting someone else drive. You might be picking up on these things already, that there's things that you have an emotional response to, right? You're a little bit flooded with certain experiences. That's what I like to call it. Or you're having an echo, right? It's almost an
Yeah.
echo of that previous experience.
Yeah.
So, okay, so I'm noticing I start to, have a reaction in myself with certain situations or certain people or certain interactions really get to me. Like I can feel anger boiling over when this person does this, or you're just noticing these responses happening, right? Okay, so I'm curious about that. I want to navigate that. I want to see what's going on there. Maybe I'm going to meet with a therapist, preferably a trauma-informed therapist, because I think it's important to do that. I think it's important to meet with someone who is trained in trauma and try to identify what those triggers are, what stimulus in the environment present, like what are the patterns, right? Notice I respond this way to this type of situation or, environment or stimulus. And then you start to build safety. You start to unpair that stimulus from the fear and danger, just like the experiment they did with conditioning dogs, right? With the bell and the chicken and the salivating. As humans, we can learn new behaviors. We can unpair fear and danger from that stimulus that was paired with fear and danger during the trauma. So we can do that through therapy. By practicing the skill, we can pair safety with that experience again. So I would suggest, if you're starting to pick up and notice those things, meet with someone to identify what those things are so you can go through this process of unpairing. Because right now you're paired, fear and danger has been paired with that experience. And so now when you comes up in your day-to-day life, you're gonna feel flooded, you're gonna have an emotional response. Would it be
What?
nice if we did it, right? If we could work
Yeah.
through that and navigate that?
Well, and that's what I want people to understand, that it's okay to do it.
Yeah,
You're
it's
not
okay.
weak if you
No,
go get some help and start enjoying life a little bit more. You're more
yep,
relaxed. You're more, I always call it being at peace.
yep.
Um, you don't need to live in chaos and turmoil all the time, because
Hmm.
things trigger you and all those things because
Hmm.
of a past experience.
Yeah.
And you know, meeting with somebody like you would
Hmm.
would definitely, because you help
Yeah.
not only kids, but you help all people, right? I mean, all ages, or are you just
No,
specifically for kids?
I work mostly with adults. So I
Oh,
actually
wow. Wow. Okay.
yeah, so most of my career has been with adults or adolescents.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so as a school social worker, I worked at a high school. And right now, I mostly, if I have adolescents, they're mostly older adolescents, like entering young adulthood, or I have young adults, I have middle-aged adults. Um, so that's typically the population that I work with. Yeah.
So it's
Uh,
never too late.
no, it's never too late. No, a lot of the people I work with are adults. But I do think if we can get children into those supports early on, it can reduce a lot of the damage of it. And the way I like to look at healing from trauma, you're not getting rid of it. Trauma doesn't go away, but you expand around it. That's what's happening, right? So we're better able to hold space for it, to respond to it, to feel in control of our response to the trauma, but the trauma stays with you. It does rewire your brain. It changes you.
Right.
They've done brain scans. They can see damage to the brain from traumatic experiences. So it changes you, but you learn how to expand around it. And that's where the empowerment is. Like, we don't choose the
Right.
trauma that happened to us. We do choose the healing
And how we
from it.
respond.
Yeah. Like a
Eh,
like a wound, right? Like you would with
right.
you break your arm, you
Right.
get a
Right.
scratch on your knee. This is
Right.
a wound, and it needs healing, and it needs response and intervention.
Right. Oh man, that's a powerful way to say that, because I think so many people think I can't go see anybody. That shows, that I'm not strong enough. I'm weak or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, wow, that's powerful. Thank you for sharing that, because I think
Yeah.
there's people out there that probably need to hear that. I mean, 80% of us have had a traumatic experience that's affecting us, probably in a negative way.
Hmm.
Um, and we don't deserve to live in chaos. We
Yeah.
don't deserve to live. We deserve to live with peace. We deserve to be
Hmm.
able to handle those things in a more conducive way to make ourselves feel good and feel good
Yeah.
about the world.
Yeah.
And that's what you're doing for people.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing. Again,
Yeah.
what you're doing. You are a servant leader for
Thank you.
sure.
Wow.
So getting down to the end, we've almost been on an hour.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have three questions. I wrote a book called
Okay.
The Three Ps: Finding Your Purpose, Perspective, and Passion. You've kind of talked a
Hmm.
little bit about it, but I ask every one of my guests those three
Yeah.
questions. What is your purpose in life?
I think my purpose in life is to be, I mean, I truly think, I think of the idea of the indigo child is to heal myself so I can heal others, and to just like stay on that continuum, of just the ups and downs of life, like healing. I think healing is my purpose.
Wow. And helping
Yeah.
others.
Yeah.
Um, Serving, I heard a statement one time: when you're feeling helpless, help others. Um, maybe it should be when you feel like you need to be healed, you can heal others, or something to
Hmm.
that effect. That's
Hmm.
beautifully said. And now the
Hmm.
next one, I skip over perspective, and I'll tell you why, but I go to passion. So, what is your passion in life?
I think my passion in life is to connect. I've noticed I'm very passionate about vulnerability, actually.
Yeah,
Just in
yeah,
my day to day. I mean, outside of being a therapist, meeting new people, I want to get to know the part of them, the side of them they're not showing to people, you know?
wow,
And I find so much passion. I feel very alive when I can connect with people in that way, whether it's a new friend, or, someone, a colleague, or whatever it is, whatever the experience is. I'm very passionate about that experience, about vulnerability. So I would say, as a passion, that's something that guides me in life, is finding ways to connect with others through vulnerability.
and then you use that to help serve
Hmm.
them and help them.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I always say that purpose and passion equal each other.
Hmm.
They kind of are here, but
Hmm.
what holds it together is your perspective.
Hmm.
So your perspective on life, and things come at us all the time to kind of try to take us out of our purpose and passion and
Hmm.
change our perspective. What is your perspective in life that holds your purpose and passion together?
So I would say my perspective, and this has shifted for me over
Yeah,
my
they
through my
do all the
own
time.
healing
Yeah.
and work, but I view life through this lens of like post-traumatic growth. That growth is endless, a growth mindset that I can navigate. I'm going to experience trauma over and over and over again in my life. It is not over for me. And I believe in my capacity to learn and grow from that experience. I welcome that experience because it's another new level of me, of knowing myself, of connecting to myself. So I've now have this perspective of life, of growth, curiosity, um, of just what's to come, whether it's positive or negative, that it's part of connecting deeper to myself and my higher self and my authentic self. Each of those experiences is another opportunity to pick up the pieces of me that I want to keep to move
Wow.
forward in life. So I would say that's my perspective, is post-traumatic growth. I believe in that wholeheartedly, because it's just the reality of life. We think,
Right.
oh, this is the end. In reality, it's just the start to a new version of you. And that's exciting.
Is it hard for you sometimes to trust when good things are happening?
I would say I have developed a lot more safety in that, but for a long time in my life, I did not trust that. It could be even relationships. Even in my current relationship, we're getting married in September, and there's been different chapters in our relationship where our relationship is very good, very healthy, very loving, unconditional love. I've never had a relationship like that before. And I had to learn to build safety in that kind of love, because my body wanted to tell me that this is terrifying.
Right,
This
right.
is terrifying to have love like this. So to keep it though, I had to build safety with it because I didn't want to sabotage it, right? I wanted to let this love continue to grow and blossom. So I had to learn how to build safety in things that were good for me, and setting boundaries and authentic connections with friends. I mean, there were some friends that I cut out of my life because I realized we didn't have a healthy connection, um, and allowing myself to live in love, to let people love me and care about me and help me, ask for help, right? So I had to build safety with that. But if for a long time I didn't feel safe with that. And so I feel like I'm in a place now where I'm ready to get married. I'm ready to have a family because I feel safe with love. I feel safe with having a healthy experience. So yeah, I think it's definitely possible, but it does take work. It takes time. You have to build that safety.
Yeah. And the building that safety builds the trust. Like I know people that if things are going really well,
Hmm.
you would think that the sky is falling. And when you
Yeah.
talk to them and you get to know them, it's because they don't trust it. They don't
Oh
trust
yeah.
that good things are supposed to
Self-sabotage.
happen. Yeah, they're not
Oh
supposed
yeah.
to happen to me,
Yep.
or if I
Yep.
trust it and I feel good about something, it's just going to last for a little bit. So I'm not going to trust it anyways. And I'm going to go back to feeling crappy anyways.
Oh
So
yeah. You see that with people with their birthdays. I've had people where, or I've communicated with people who they feel uncomfortable celebrating their birthday because maybe as a child at one point in their life they had an authentic expression of happiness and excitement, and a parent was like, "Shh, stop, don't do that. Be quiet. You're so loud." And so they learned my authentic happiness is bad.
yeah,
And now as an adult, I feel uncomfortable with authentic happiness. That's where the pairing happens. And we need to learn how to unpair that because authentic happiness should feel safe. It's
yeah.
not bad. There's nothing wrong with you. This is you deserve this. But a lot of people aren't taught that. They're raised being, you know what I mean, not being able to grow and express themselves authentically.
Well, and I think a part of it goes back to this. I tell people all the time you can look at life as an opportunity or an
Hmm.
obligation.
Yeah.
And you said it just a minute ago, and I want to touch on this, and we can wrap it up because I know you got to go. But um, you said everything that happens to me is an opportunity for me to grow,
Hmm.
whether
Hmm.
it's a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah.
So if you have that mindset, and it takes a
Hmm.
while to develop and trust that mindset,
Hmm.
you have that mindset, then you can enjoy the good times a little bit more
Hmm.
because you know that if something bad happens, it's just something for me to learn and grow and keep progressing, and
Exactly.
I'm okay. I'm okay
Exactly.
with that.
Hmm.
Man, this has been awesome. You're an amazing person. You lived in
Oh, thank
Hawaii,
you.
you dirt bike, you ski, indoor outdoor sand volleyball. You live life to the fullest.
Hmm.
Uh, Congrats on your marriage.
Thank
I
you.
have met your fiance. He's a heck of a person.
Yeah.
Owns his own business, is doing well, and so forth. Have met your dad. He's an amazing speaker, and
Yeah.
uh, you're an amazing person, Sophia.
Thank
I
you.
just look at you with high regard, and what you're doing for people is
Thank you.
amazing. But you do it. You spend time with yourself first to get present and trust yourself and get in a good spot, and then
Mhm.
you pour it out to other people. Just an amazing person. Thank you so much for coming on today. You helped so many people today. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe, for being open to hearing more about this, for trying to build awareness. I want to give the same back to you because I think you've made a personal commitment in your life to understand it better and to be trauma informed. So, I want you to know you have a lot of credit in that too, and you're putting goodness out in the world. So,
Well, let's keep spreading it. Let's keep getting it out there. Let's get
yeah,
people understanding it. So we just, my goal is to make the world a better place and make people happy and
yeah.
so forth. And I know yours is too. So we'll keep working. And I just appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate everyone listening. Thank you so much for listening to this week's edition of the People Progressing podcast. Sophia was amazing. Sophia, before we go, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, how can people get a hold of you?
Yes.
Sorry
So
about that.
no, that's okay. So my website is mindfulindigo.com. So all my contact info is there. I have a contact form. You can also send me an email at Sophia, Sofia, at mindfulindigo.com. And mindful indigo is spelled MINDFULINDIGO.
Thank you so much. And you can
Yeah,
get a hold
thank
of
you,
me.
Joe.
Yeah, and you guys can get a hold of me if you want me to come speak to your groups or anything like that. I love working with groups, organizations, teams, and so
Yeah.
forth. Coach Joe White 97 at gmail.com. Again, thank you so much, all of you, for listening. And thank you, Sophia, for changing the world for everyone. I appreciate everybody. Keep progressing and have a great day.